we've allowed enough time for those people who may be still interested in joining to dial in. So again, this is Kimberly Robinson with the Department of Revenue. And thank you for joining us today to talk about the Frontline Worker COVID-19 Hazard Pay Rebate Program. This program was the result of legislation passed during the first special session. It was Act 12 by Representative Sam Jenkins, and that bill was co-authored by most of the legislators. It was signed on yesterday by the governor, and the program actually, the application process starts tomorrow. We wanted to take this opportunity to introduce the online application to stakeholders and answer any questions you all may have for the interested persons who will be applying, as well as give you a preview of how the application will look, both the online version and the paper version, and show you the website that people will be using to apply. Joining me on the Zoom meeting today is Luke Morris, the Assistant Secretary for Legal Affairs, and Luke has worked very hard along with many of the department's staff in making this application and all of the parts of it a reality. My thanks to Luke Morris, Danelle Gershow, Kevin Richard, Redmond Saunier, and Michelle West, Lindsay Brogan, and Michelle Galan for all their work over the last 10 days in getting this off the ground. And I will turn it over to Luke so he can give you a preview.
All right, thank you, Secretary. This is Luke Morris with the Department of Revenue. What we're going to do for you is demo you the online application functionality, as well as a few of the items of guidance that we've released so far. But to begin the process, a frontline worker will visit this website, frontlineworkers.la.gov. This is our main cover page at the moment. Tomorrow, or really at 12:01 a.m. tonight, when the application start period opens, we will have some additional information on this particular website that will have not only links to the existing guidance, but there will be a link that says to click here to submit your application. We are going to have an online application as well as a paper application for those individuals that may not have the means to log in rural areas of the state that lack broadband internet, for example. But we are encouraging all applicants to use the electronic format, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So from this screen here, from this website, they'll be able to click on a link, and that will take them to this page here. This is the actual start of the application portal. Tomorrow we will have this available. Obviously, we're going to demo it in English for you, but we will have it available in Spanish and Vietnamese as well. So at the previous page, there'll be different links to click based on the language that is preferred. But starting here, they'll be able to click right here on this application, and that will start the process underway. This first page here is just the general eligibility screen, and you can see at the top there are the different steps that will progress as you click through the screens. This is the criteria page. We wanted to put at the very beginning what are the criteria elements to qualify for the rebate. It's very straightforward, coming directly from the legislation mainly. And then we also have a link here that will take them to one of the pieces of guidance that we've issued so far. That's a revenue information bulletin, which is right here. They'll be able to review this for more information. This is already posted on the department's website. It's got a lot of important information that goes through the different job categories, as well as some of the other things that we'll look at in just a little bit. So once they've reviewed the criteria, they believe they qualify, they'll begin to start the application steps. This second one here is the details. This lets them know at the front end before they start entering any information what would be helpful for them to have with them to fill out the application. These first three items right here, pretty straightforward contact type information. The statute does require that if they filed a 19 or 18 return, that their income has to not exceed a certain amount that we'll look at in a moment, but we do suggest they have these returns next to them if possible, as well as their employer information and then the pay stub information. We'll touch on that in a little bit as well. We are also, for the $250 rebates, for those that do qualify, we're going to issue those both by direct deposit and by paper check. So if they, during the application process, if they provide their bank account information and everything is valid, then we will we'll issue the rebate by direct deposit. Otherwise, it'll be issued in the form of a paper check. Very, very similar to the tax return and tax refund process the department is already in charge of administering. We were able to build in this application functionality to mirror those processes that work very well every tax filing season. So we're piggybacking a lot of that. Also importantly, that if an individual was a frontline worker, they met all of the eligibility criteria, but then subsequently passed away for whatever reason or cause, their surviving family members will be able to claim the rebate on their behalf. So we tell them at the beginning of the application that you need three things to do that. That's the date of death, this LDR claim form, and then the certificate of death. And we have a specific step on that in a little bit. So this first page here, pretty standard stuff. They'll just fill out their name, information, social security number. And once this application is submitted, it's going to come into the department's system, and we will, using things like socials and addresses, we're going to verify that the applicant is who they say they are. We're going to check it against tax return data that we have on file, as well as third-party data from the Workforce Commission that will assist us in verifying that folks are being honest on their applications and that they are, in fact, qualified for them. One part of this is because we will be issuing paper checks. We have an address verification section built in. So this here is the address to the Department of Revenue, North 3rd Street. All of the applications, they'll be required to hit this verify button. And as part of that, we run an immediate check to make sure that the address is valid. So I entered in North, spelled out 3rd Street, but the post office approved address is 3rd instead of spelling out the word third. So they'll just come here and select the address that's correct with them with the +4 zip. And then that will change it, and that will be the verified address. One other thing to mention on this screen, let me go back to this first box. You see this little orange triangle in the corner? That is the designation that these boxes and this full application is ADA compliant for visually impaired individuals. So we do have that built in if the person is not, if they have need those accommodations. So again, they'll enter their contact information on this screen and then progress to the next one. So in most cases, we're expecting folks to not be applying on behalf of the deceased person. So they'll just click no in this step and then move on from there. But if they are applying for a surviving spouse or parent, child, whatever the case may be, they can click this button for yes, and then they'll be prompted to fill out a little bit more information. One thing that we are going to require is that they supply the date of death on the front end. Depending on when the person died would obviously dictate whether or not they would receive the rebate. So we will be reviewing that. And we are requiring that they attach this existing form. They'll be able to click right here in the application, and that will pull up a new window where they can fill out this information and then PDF in and attach it back to the return. But it's as simple as this. They just have to fill out this declaration and then sign it and then attach it to the application. We're also requiring that they include their death certificate. We do need that information to verify that the individual is actually deceased and that they were working in an eligible job. The attachments can be uploaded directly from the software. So they'll just click that little prompt box and then they'll enter in the description of what they are attaching, and they click this browse button, and they'll just locate on their computer where what document it is that they are uploading. They'll click save, and then it'll attach directly into it, and they can review that from there. If while they are submitting and preparing the application, if they do not have documents to upload at that time, that is okay. It may delay the how quickly we can issue the rebate to them. But we do let them know that if they can't attach it for whatever reason at the time, we're going to send them a letter with additional instructions on what to do from there. But again, in most cases, this will be no. They'll just click no and progress forward. This screen here is the verification page, and it's probably one of the most important ones where the applicant is going to self-certify that they are eligible for the program by going through each of the prompts. So first and foremost, they have to declare that they are a resident of Louisiana. Now, if they click no, that's not going to prevent them from moving forward, but we are going to receive the application that has potentially disqualifying information on it. When we receive those applications in the system, we are going to send request letters to applicants that, let's say they click this no box, we're going to send them a letter and ask them to confirm that you don't live in Louisiana and explain that that is one of the eligibility requirements. And if they can't, if it was an error, they'll be able to correct it, but otherwise they would not be eligible to receive the rebate. Then they'll have to answer about whether they filed a 19 tax return and an 18 tax return. Similar to the IRS stimulus payments, the IRS applied the rules that they were going to base it off the 2019 tax return. And if you had not filed that, then you can use the 2018 return. The due date for this 2019 return is tomorrow, the same day that this application goes live. So assuming they filed both returns, they'll click these two yes buttons, and you'll notice this additional little paragraph pops up. If they did file the returns, then they have to declare that their AGI, their adjusted gross income, was $50,000 or less, either on their 19 return if it's been filed, and if not filed, on their 2018 return. And you know, in the case that they didn't file their 19, their own extension, they would just click no there and then report what was on the 18 return. But let's assume that they did not file either return. They'll click no to both of these responses, and then this new box will pop up. And they'll have to explain why they did not file the 19 or 18 return. And these reasons are perfectly permissible. They could have been a dependent that didn't have a filing requirement. They may have not lived in Louisiana and moved here, let's say in January or February, and still did the qualifying criteria of working in one of the job categories for the 200 hours and so forth. Or they may have just simply not been required to file a return because their annual income was below the filing threshold. And then we include an other box if there's other information that they would like to provide there. But in most cases, I think we can expect that individuals will have filed their 19 and 18 return, and if they meet this $50,000 or less threshold, they'll click yes there and move down to the bottom section of this page. For this one, the statute requires that on or after March 11th, they be employed in one of the specific job categories. So they'll click yes, and then it'll prompt them with this box. And here they'll let us know what job or position that they were working in. So they may have been a child care service provider. They'll click that, and then there'll be a description that pops up as well. This description is based on guidance from CISA that's also referenced in the statute. Now, let's say that they maybe they're a part-time employee and they were working for two different employers part-time, but both on the front line. They do have the option to select as many jobs that are applicable to them to submit. Now, obviously, if they submitted all of these very different jobs for that period, that would be something that would trigger LDR to review the application more closely. And then we do provide a link right here for them to pull a full list of all of the jobs, which going back to this, this RIB that I showed you a moment ago, this Revenue Information Bulletin, at the very bottom of it, you'll see on pages, starting on page 4, you will see the different categories of jobs and then the specific jobs. And these are coming directly from the statute. So these are the ones that are been specified by the legislature to be eligible to receive the rebate benefits. So here they'll click whichever, like I said, jobs are appropriate, and then they will have to declare that from March 22nd to May 14th, they were required to provide in-person services in Louisiana. So that's the frontline worker aspect, that they were providing an in-person service that was public-facing or dealing with customers or clients. It could not be a job where they were working from home or remotely or in some type of position that did not involve any kind of public interaction. And then lastly, for that same period, they will have to declare that they worked at least 200 hours over the 8-week period that was dedicated to responding to or mitigating the ongoing public health emergency. So once they complete this screen, they will click next, and then we will move to the employer screen. So here, the applicant will let us know who they were working for. So in its free form, they can type in whatever the information is, provide us the employer's name, the address, and their specific title or job description. So like I was saying earlier, once these applications are submitted, we're going to verify the information, the self-certified information, against additional data that we have on file at the Department of Revenue. So that's going to include everything from these individuals' state tax returns, as well as data that we receive from other agencies, such as LWC, the Workforce Commission. They have more employer-specific data, as well as unemployment data that we have built into our system to run checks behind the scenes to verify that these individuals are eligible. However, we're letting them know on the front end, if they would like an expedited rebate, they can go ahead and attach pay stubs for those 8 weeks. And just like with the death certificate, they can upload those into the application as they file it. And that would ensure the most expedited rebate verification and issuance. Now, if they are, like we mentioned in the revenue information bulletin, if they're self-employed, independent contractor, gig worker, that does not disqualify them for the rebate program. They will just have to provide in this section here who their client or service recipient or payor was, address, description of services provided. And then because they're self-employed, they're not being required by an employer to engage in a certain type of work. They're going to have to let us know how those services were substantially dedicated to responding or mitigating to the COVID-19 health emergency. And they can upload that at the time of filing through this attachment function here. Or if they submit the return without any additional information, that will probably prompt a letter from the department where we will ask for them to let us know exactly what you were doing and how that impacted the COVID-19 response, so that we can have the information we need to approve the application. All right, we'll click next from here, and that brings us to the direct deposit screen. So we're nearly done at this point. We've entered all in the main qualifying information. Now we're just going to ask you, do you want a direct deposit of your rebate? Very similar to a tax refund, they'll just click yes. These questions mirror what's on the state tax return. They have to say that no, they're not going to send the money overseas. That's a question we have to ask. And then they'll just fill out the information as it's requested. For the routing number, they'll be able to, as they enter in the routing number, if it is in the system and certified as a bank's routing number, it'll populate the name of the bank right here. And they'll enter the account number twice for confirmation. A couple of notes for the direct deposit issue. So if this is the first time they've ever filed anything with the Department of Revenue, such as a tax return, if they've never filed a return with us before, we're not going to be direct depositing those rebates. We won't be able to clear it through our internal fraud check process. So they will have had to file a tax return previously to get direct deposit. Otherwise, it's just going to, the system will automatically change it to a paper check refund. The other item of note is right here. This is also in the emergency rule, and it says that the name of the applicant must be the name on the bank account. The reason for that is sometimes we will see that with tax returns, an individual may visit a certain tax return preparer or potentially a loan company that will file a return for them and retain a percentage of whatever the refund is. We did not want to inadvertently create this secondary loan market by way of this rebate program. So we're not allowing the rebates to, thousands of rebates to go to this loan company that may be operating. It has to be, if you're the applicant, I'm Luke Morris and I'm applying for a rebate, my rebate has to go into an account that is owned by Luke Morris. So little taxpayer applicant protection issue there. We'll just click no on here because I don't have a routing number memorized, and move to the next screen. And this is the paid prepare section. This application is very straightforward, very simple. We're not expecting, or we don't even think people need to have paid preparers to fill out the application, but if they so choose, similar to a tax return, we're required to collect this information under separate state statutes. So if they are visiting a practitioner or a family member who may be getting compensation for it, they'll just fill out their information here. But again, in most cases, we expect them to not need a preparer to fill out this application. Then we'll click next from here, and this will be the review screen. So everything that they entered up until this point will be displayed under each of these subheadings. So if they would like to print a copy of the application for their records, all they need to do is expand each of these and then go to File Print, and they can print a copy for themselves. But all the information will be redisplayed for them at this point, and they'll be able to go back and review it one more time before clicking the Submit button, or the Next button, I should say. And before I go into the signature section, I wanted to say too that all of this information that is being submitted, both from the online applications as well as the paper applications, is going to be recorded in our system. So while we can't, same as with a tax return, we cannot disclose what any one applicant put on their application, we are going to prepare a statistical report after the close of this application period and let stakeholders such as the legislature and the governor's office know that we had, let's say, X number of child service providers that applied and were approved for the rebate. Or going back to the contact screen, we had X number of individuals from Tangipahoa Parish that applied and were approved. So we will have at the conclusion of this program, we'll have those statistical reports available for anyone that is interested. And then if we click next from this screen, this is the final step, it's the signature and submission page. They will have to declare under penalties of perjury and potential recapture of the rebate issue that all the information they provided was correct. They will also have to agree on the front end that they consent to LWC sharing data with LDR for purposes of us getting that employment information to verify in our system. So they will have to consent to that as well. They'll enter in their signature here, click submit, and then they will enter in an email for confirmation purposes. Once those two emails match and they click OK, it will bring them to this thank you page. They will have a 6-digit confirmation code that they'll be able to print out if they choose. But at this moment, when they see this screen they will have completed and submitted their application. On our end, we will be in receipt of the application and we will begin running those internal verification processes to see if there's anything missing from the application or the answers on the application make them ineligible, and that would trigger request letters to go out the door. And then we'll move from that point there. A few other things I wanted to mention. This is the emergency rule that was filed yesterday with the register, so it is in effect for the next 120 days, and it explains the more detailed provisions of this program that we are responsible for administering. A lot of it is coming from the statute. So again, like the list of job categories that qualify for coming directly from statute, and they are repeated in the regulation. Scrolling down, I mean, we talk about how the application works. For example, if you file more than one application or both the electronic and paper application, we're only going to review the first one that we receive, and the other ones will be denied. We talk about the request letter process in here, and they have 30 days to respond to that. We will be offsetting the rebate, as is explained in the information bulletin, for only delinquent child support payments and delinquent spousal support payments. And then we do encourage various creditors and banks to make sure that they do not seize these funds. They are exempt from general seizure provisions. Now, the main thing I want to talk about, though, is the program cap. The legislature has appropriated $50 million from the Federal CARES Act disbursement for this program. At $50 million total cap for $250 rebates, that is enough for the first 200,000 applicants. So there will be anyone that applies after that first 200,000, we will maintain their name and information and keep them in line for priority purposes in case the legislature does appropriate more money into the fund and we can make disbursements later down the road. But to our paper application, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, we are reserving 25% of that 50 million cap to be reserved for paper applications. The concern was that with the electronic application, you may have a large group of people submit that application tomorrow. At the same time, you may have individuals file their paper application, but it doesn't show up in the department's mailbox for 3 to 5 business days. We didn't want the individuals that maybe didn't have means necessary to file an electronic application that had to use the paper application and mail it in. We wanted to make sure that they had some reserved level of the cap, which is that 25% number. If we don't receive all those paper applications and everyone files electronically, that would be fine as well, and we'll just reallocate that $12.5 million to the overall cap. And then the last thing that I want to show you is the paper application. Give me just a second to switch over my screen. All right, this is the paper application, and it's going to look almost completely identical to the electronic application. That we do have a dedicated PO box for them to mail completed applications to, and this will be the phone number. It's the standard LDR call center number where they can call and ask questions about the applications. If they are confused about what specific sentence means, they can call in and receive help from one of our call center representatives. They will not be able to we won't be filling out the application for anyone, but we will be able to point them in the right direction if they do have questions or whatever the case may be. But again, this should all look very familiar. It's the same information, just on paper form that they would either fill out on their own computer, although we would prefer it electronic again, or they can print it out and fill it out by hand. This form will be available on the department's website, and we're also distributing it out to various stakeholders so that they can make them available to individuals. Employer information, that's all the same, direct deposit, the signature section. One thing to point out, you notice that there's only one signature box. If you have a married couple that are both frontline workers, they have to submit 2 different applications. There are no joint applications like you have with the tax return. They would each fill out one. And then the 3rd page here is just some instructions that guide them in filling out pages 1 and 2. And then page 4 is just a recap of all the different job positions. And see, here we have codes over to the left. When they go back to page 1, if the person is a nurse, they're code 11. They'll go back to this page at the bottom and they'll list the code from the job table, which they'll write in 11 here and check the box yes. And I think that about covers everything. So I will turn it back over to you, Secretary.
Thank you, Luke. I had to unmute. I think Luke has given a very thorough presentation, so I will open the floor to questions. And so to allow for an organized process of question asking, I would ask that the participants raise their hand to ask questions. That's a function in the Zoom chat. So if you have a question, please just raise your hand. And I think Luke can control unmuting everyone, so we can see if we have any questions.